From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thank you very much, Ollie. It's Monday. It is July 1st, 2019. Welcome to July. Let's hope we'll get a summer from here on in. This is your Richie Allen Show. It is, of course, broadcasting live right now on Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, triggerwarning.tv, my own website, the TuneIn app, and many other places beside the saviour of the alternative media. Good to be back with you.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show. It's the Richie Allen Show, broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Now, the former Royal Navy weapons researcher, the physicist, the man with degrees in nuclear and atomic physics, Barrie Trower, joins the programme again today, a month after the first part of a Q&A we did with him about electromagnetic frequencies, about non-ionising radiation and 5G. So get your questions into me through Twitter. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Barry will be with me in around about 25 minutes time, and I'm looking forward to catching up with him because it is a very, very serious issue indeed is this. Are you well? Have you had a good weekend? Good for you. I'm glad. Did a newspaper review this morning. Will do one every weekday morning at 9:30. If you want to catch any of them, they're all on YouTube now. That's youtube.com/Richie Allen Show. Nothing like it. Europe's most listened to independent radio show. Let's get on with it then. Let's do it. Always free. Always free. I do ask that those who can afford to put a couple of pounds a month into the PayPal or the bank do so. I don't ask very often. I'm not asking right now, even though we always need support. Making the point that this programme will always be free to air. The information disseminated by the guests on this programme will always be free. I will never, ever, ever put it behind a paywall, ever, under any circumstances. If the worst comes to the worst and it isn't supported, I'll go back to the private sector and there will be no hard feelings. But I will never charge for it, ever, all right? Just saying that. Been a bit of noise on social media today about yours truly and this programme. It is completely independent. It gets money from no commercial entity. It is not sponsored by anyone. It is produced, edited and introduced by me. Totally independent. Alright, okay. Let's get on with it then. Hi to Andy Newman. Hi to Diane Dennison. How you doing, Diane? Nice to hear from you again. Diane is interested in the 5G issue, believes people must wake up to it, and she's glad that Barrie Trower is back on the programme today. Hi to These Are the Damned, and to Steve James, to Mark Findlay, to Sue, to Dweezil, to my friend Mwinga, my only black friend. And you're going to be known as that Mwinga by me from this day forward. My only black friend. So I can't be racist then. Hi to Laurie Hatfield. How you doing, Laurie? Nice to know you're listening as well. Now, Sir Cliff Richard, if you please. Sir Cliff Richard, congratulations. And I don't know the rest of the words. You know Cliff, living doll. He was outside Westminster today with BBC Radio 2 DJ Paul Gambaccini. They want to rebalance the legal system. Cliff is pissed off after what happened to him when the police tipped off the BBC that his house was going to be raided during an investigation into a sexual assault claim. You remember back in 2014, helicopters in front of Cliff's pad and all of that. Cliff Richard said the media coverage had left his reputation in tatters, and he wants a rebalancing of the legal system. He wants anonymity for sexual offence suspects before they are charged. Do you want to hear a bit of what Cliff said today? Here's Cliff Richard speaking outside Parliament today. We'll get the other side of it in a minute. Cliff Richard.
I don't think people realise what it's like to have the accusation made when you know that you are not guilty of this. I spent, in total, I suppose 4 years, because even though the police had agreed that they had made a big mistake 2 years in, I don't think I slept correctly for almost 4 years, maybe 3 hours a night. That's a good night. But when I looked at myself, I had changed. I was gaunt. I didn't look my 40 years. But it was a terrible, terrible time. And the reason why I couldn't feel jubilation is because what I felt was 100% relief. Gandhi said the worst thing about Christianity is Christians. I'd like to add to that, the worst thing about humanity is humans. We are incapable of being perfectly good. So therefore there will be pedophiles. We have to weed them out, but not at the cost of the innocent. The guilty deserve everything they get. The innocent don't deserve what they get.
Right, if you were in his shoes, it might be reasonable to be adamant that you should have the right to anonymity. And I am sure that it was a torrid time for him and for any man or woman wrongly accused of sexual assault or rape or anything like that. There cannot be anything worse. You'd rather be falsely accused of theft, of infidelity, of manslaughter, anything but sexual assault or sexual crimes. Right, however, Harriet Wistrich is a lawyer at the Centre for Women's Rights. She doesn't agree with Cliff Richard and explains why to Sky News.
Well, the problem with his approach is that we already have a criminal justice system that massively fails victims of sexual offences. We have like 1 in 25 of people who report rape or sexual offence that result in a conviction, and an estimated 1 in 10 who are victims of rape or sexual offence who actually come forward to report. Now, anything that goes further to provide a disincentive to reporting rape or sexual offence is, which this measure will do, is going to only worsen the situation. We have a principle of transparency and openness in the justice system. Why should there be an exception in relation to these sorts of cases as opposed to other heinous crimes like murder or terrorism offences? This would be a very dangerous move, because what it would mean is that rich and powerful men in particular, who are able to say to victims, and I'm not suggesting that Cliff Richard or Paul Gambattini are in this situation, but those that do commit offences, and we know that there are many who do commit such offences, are able to say to victims, don't come forward, no one will ever believe you. Now, it's only because women have come forward around Harvey Weinstein, around Jimmy Savile, around Rolf Harris, around Stuart Hall, Max Clifford and others, that there's been able to be a successful prosecution. It's difficult enough as it is to charge these offences. If you are then saying to women, do not speak out about your experience because you could be prosecuted, which is what would happen if you had anonymity. It would mean that you would face potential criminal proceedings if you said that man raped me before he's charged. So I think it's a very retrogressive move.
Yes. Now, David Stanford tweets thus: no one should be identified before being charged, Richie, convicted even, but that's the BBC reporting what hasn't happened. Surprised they hadn't said his home had collapsed. Free fall speed all by itself, winks, says David. David thinks nobody should be identified before being charged. And a lot of listeners will agree with that. Mwinga asked what they did to Cliff, or says what they did to him was very shameful and illegal, to say the least. Has the BBC compensated him for that? I believe he received just over £200,000 in compensation. Paul Alawi says, Richie, can I be your only half Arab friend? That position has been filled, Paul. No, it hasn't. You can be if you want. Don't get me started on Cliff. His music should have left his reputation in tatters, says Paul. Good man, Paul. Many's an older lady would disagree. Thanks to Molly for a question for Barrie Trower. I'll put that question straight away to Barry when he comes on. I'm sure he'll have something to say about Glastonbury. This is your Richie Allen Show, 12 and a half minutes past the hour. July 1st, 2019, broadcasting live from Salford in Greater Manchester. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to come down on the side of Harriet Wistrich from the where's she from again, Richie? She's from the Centre for Women's Rights. Not trying to curry favour now with my female listenership, but I wouldn't change the law. Changing it might, as she said, lead to powerful people getting away with it more easily, particularly richer and more powerful people. And we refer to Savile, even though It was a posthumous thing. Posthumously, those things came out about Savile. But I wouldn't change the law, and I understand what she was trying to say. That being said, I would have sympathy with any man or woman who was wrongly not charged, but wrongly accused of it. Because I do agree with them. It leaves a stain like no other crime or misdemeanor. It is that thing about, well, there must be something there. And there would be people now who would never leave a child alone with somebody who had been wrongly accused of committing an offence against children. Even though the person had been exonerated and proven to be innocent, most people wouldn't allow a child anywhere near them alone. And you know this. And that's what Richard was saying at Westminster today. Big story developing. It's not that shocking because Iran had said that Iran would do it, but it has breached the limit on its stockpile of enriched uranium. This limit was set in the 2015 nuclear deal with the world, you know this. The International Atomic Energy Agency has confirmed this today. Its inspectors had verified that the 300 kilogram... Say it right, Richie. The International Atomic Energy Agency said its inspectors had verified the 300 kilogram cap had indeed been exceeded. The Iranians said they would do this because of the reckless and lawless behaviour of US President Donald Trump in foisting more sanctions on the Iranian country, on the country of Iran. So Iran stepped up production of enriched uranium. That's used to make reactor fuel and potentially nuclear weapons, right? In response to these sanctions by the US, the Iranian government says it has no intention whatsoever of making nuclear weapons. European nations have said there will be consequences. The UK Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt broke away from preparing for a big interview on Sky News tonight, warning Iran and all the rest of it. Here is Sky News' Dominic Waghorn with pretty fair and reasonable commentary on what's happened today.
It's significant because it means for the first time Iran is in breach of the deal that it negotiated over 5 years with America, European partners, including the UK, France, Germany and the European Union, and Russia and China. Now, the Americans, under Donald Trump, walked away from the deal 14 months ago, and they then started putting a lot of pressure on the Iranians, supplying a lot of sanctions, and that has made life very difficult for the Iranians, and they've been warning the Europeans for a while that if that continued, then there was really no point in the Iranians staying in this deal because they weren't benefiting from it. It was meant to be a freeze on any Iranian nuclear weapons activity, even though they say they don't want the bomb, in return for sanctions being lifted. So from their point of view, there's no point in being in this deal if the Europeans can't make it worth their while, and they say that's not happening. So they have been applying pressure on the Europeans, first of all saying that they're going to stop exporting this enriched uranium, that under the deal they're only allowed a certain amount of, and warning that could lead to a stockpile, which today is now enough for them to be in breach of the deal. So there are two questions really. What are the Europeans going to do about it? Jeremy Hunt a while ago warned about grave consequences if the Iranians do this. And then, of course, what are the Americans going to do about it? Because relations and tensions between Iran and America are already pretty severe, with the possibility of military action only just averted last week after that drone was down. So it's a question of where we go from here. And I think the ball probably is in Donald Trump's court now. Key is how he's going to respond.
How's he going to respond? Well, he's going to ask Jared Kushner, what am I supposed to do? And Kushner will ask Bibi, the lunatic Netanyahu, and he will tell Kushner what to tell Donald to do, and that's what the United States will do. More on that as it develops, of course. The Richie Allen Show, live on Fab Radio 2, triggerwarning.tv, my own website, is the TuneIn app, and multiple other locations. Bobby Norris is somebody I never heard of until today. He's apparently a star of Towie, and Towie is the only way is Essex. I'm not being sarcastic here. I'm not. I don't watch crap like that. If I did, I don't think you'd ever listen to this programme. If I did, I wouldn't be presenting this programme. It's monumental crap. It is garbage that is immeasurable. It is, and so are the participants. Utterly feckless, vacuous, empty-headed fucking morons. And yet the UK's media makes celebrities of them. Absolutely, it's rubbish, right? Bobby Norris wants to make online homophobic abuse a criminal offence. Bobby's gay. That's good for Bobby. He was at Parliament today, and he basically was there to oversee a debate in Parliament, because they are debating this, whether or not to make online homophobic abuse a specific crime. This is crazy. And before he went to Westminster, he went on the Victoria Derbyshire programme on BBC Two. And he talks to Victoria Derbyshire about his own experiences with online abuse. Here's Bobby Norris from Towie.
I mean, it's so intense what some people think's acceptable to send people online. And like you've touched upon, like I've been sent death threats, people have wished cancer on me. They've told me that I should have acid thrown in my face. And this is literally because of my sexuality. And I can't believe, it's not until I've spoke about it that I've realised how many people are also getting like the homophobic trolling online. And I don't think it's even necessarily anything to do with what I do as a profession. I think it's so rife at the moment. So many people are going through it. And since speaking out about it and doing my petition, I can't believe the amount of messages I've had from parents and other people going through it. So for me, like you say, today I'm in Parliament, which is all a little bit exciting, and I just, fingers crossed, that can kind of make a change.
He's excited, is Bobby. Shouldn't be taking the piss out of Bobby, really. No, I shouldn't. I hold my hands up. He might be a nice fella. I have no idea. So let's make online homophobic abuse a specific criminal offence, because I've had death threats and people have wished cancer on me. They're morons, Bobby. And they're probably using a trolling account to do so. What difference does it make to you? Why don't you just mute them or block them? Give over, you know. Give over. This is about something deeper. He went on to tell Victoria Derbyshire that people should be tied to their social media, use a real picture, be traceable for accountability. So this is very serious. They want eventually to have social media platforms, okay, used only by people who can be immediately traced as to who they are. We'll come back to that in a minute. So this is everywhere today. Sky News has been running a report on crimes at Westminster. I covered this on the newspaper review this morning. So crimes in Westminster have gone up, apparently due to hate mail and due to the trolling of MPs. Here's two members of Parliament speaking. You'll hear Labour's Yvette Cooper and Yasmin Qureshi on Sky News. Okay? Yvette Cooper, Yasmin Qureshi, about their experiences with social media.
My staff at one point had to report 35 violent threats or malicious communications to the police in just 1 week. One called for my severed head to be removed from my vile body.
Right, and what? So what? What, like? And if you ask the likes of Yvette Cooper what, they'll mention Joe Cox, of course, which is an anomalous, if utterly heinous thing, right? And I know there are a lot of problems with the Joe Cox thing, don't get me started. But if we take it at face value, heinous, but very anomalous. It's a 1 in a billion thing, right? So they mentioned Joe Cox anyway.
But
You'll hear Yasmin Qureshi now.
Many MPs from all sides of the House, including Yasmin Qureshi, won't let the abuse sidetrack them from their duty.
Isn't she tough?
I take these people on, they're bullies, that's all they are, they're bullies. And I'm not going to let them intimidate me, and I'm not going to, more specifically, let them change the way I live my life.
International Trade Secretary Conservative MP Liam Fox was asked, are you surprised at the vitriol towards politicians?
Yes, I'm surprised. I'm disappointed. I asked the pupils in one of my local schools in a debate to debate the question, has social media made Britain a meaner place? And they came to the conclusion it hadn't made Britain a meaner place, but it had made it easier for mean people to be mean, which was, I suppose, the point you were making earlier. And I think the anonymity of social media has given people that ability to be deeply unpleasant, abusive, even illegal, in a way that they wouldn't be able to do face-to-face. And I think that's a societal issue that we have to deal with.
Liam Fox, anonymity. He's surprised. He's surprised at the vitriol towards politicians. Politicians have been responsible for austerity that has caused countless tens of thousands of people in this country to die. To die for a variety of reasons, to die of hunger, to die of exposure, to die of misery, to die of a broken heart, to die of just absolute misery, right? The politicians that are responsible for giving arms to the Saudi government to bomb the shit out of Yemen and Yemeni men, women and children. The politicians who took the little bit of hope that people had when they voted to leave the European Union, because they know how bad the European Union is for their circumstances here in England. These are the same politicians who have stuck their fingers up at the population and said, well, tough shit, basically, people, we will not leave the European Union. And they wonder about vitriol. And he talks about accountability and he talks about anonymity. And here is my little prediction for you today, 24 minutes past the hour. Here's my prediction for you. In the very, very near future, everybody will have to have an official verified account, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, or whether it is Instagram. You will have to have an officially verified one. Okay? Now, what I mean by that is you either don't have an account at all, which is fair enough, or if you do have an account, it must be officially verified and it will be tied to your utility bills or your smartphone contract so that your address will be known to and held by the social media operators. And guess what? When that comes in, the vast majority of people who use Instagram, Twitter and Facebook will agree with it because they are addicted to it. Every unverified account will be terminated, and then everybody using the platforms, the billions of people using them, will be snared. No debate ever, no expression of feelings or opinions ever. And I'll tell you something else. There are many good reasons why people use anonymous accounts. They're not all trolls. I would say a tiny minority are trolls who would wish death on people. A tiny minority are trolls who would wish that people be murdered. Most people want to talk about important social issues like identity politics, like gender politics, like teaching sexual orientation to 4 and 5-year-olds. People want to talk about those things on social media without being doxxed, without being outed, and without having their company or their employer contacted and told, why are you employing this bigoted person? That is why many people use anonymous accounts. And people should have the right to use those anonymous accounts. We already have laws against threatening to kill somebody. Those laws do not need to be amended. When people say that Yvette Cooper should be murdered, that is heinous. However much of an absolute arsehole Yvette Cooper might be, and she is, she doesn't deserve that. We have laws, we have ways of dealing with that, of finding those people and bringing them to justice. But the vast majority of people want to remain anonymous so that they can express themselves as they truly wish without fear of recrimination. That's a fact. Mentioned the Church of England earlier on. They've issued social media guidelines on the, through Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. He was at Facebook HQ in London talking about the church's stance or position on using social media. It's a brief clip. Justin Welby.
When you're putting something out on social media, put the truth out. Yeah, frankly, there's no such thing as an alternative fact. There is truth. There is absolute truth. There's opinion and there's truth. When you're expressing an opinion, show kindness. Don't go for the person rather than for the issue.
Don't play the man, play the ball, and be kind. It's pretty benign stuff from Justin Welby. Fair enough, I would say the same. I mean, I've been unkind on Twitter on occasion. Most recently, of course, a couple of weeks back, when various lobby groups working in the UK thought it would be fun to get stuck into yours truly. But, yeah, there are good reasons why people want to be anonymous on Twitter. I didn't always understand that, and I used to be critical of people using silly names and using silly avatars. But then I kind of understood a bit more why they do that. And I don't criticise them for doing it anymore. I understand it. Natalie says the internet will be like TV packages. That's an excellent comment. That's where it's going. David tweets, put your fingerprint in to watch YouTube. I scan to listen to Richie Allen. How else will the social credits be allocated properly? Or even bundled into a back of a van and disappeared for thinking un-German thoughts, says David. Loads of thoughts on these issues. Paul tweets, I strongly disagree with tracking people through social media or tracing them, but making people use their own name and image in their profile would probably eradicate a huge proportion of keyboard warriors who think they can cuss, defame and threaten others safe in their anonymity. Yes, Paul, but when somebody threatens you or starts swearing at you and screaming at you, it's very easy to mute them or block them. Again, I would venture the guess that the fools who hide in their mother's bedroom closet, in the wardrobe, calling people names and threatening them, are in the minority. The majority of people using anonymous accounts are because they want to say what it is they really think without being punished for it in some way. Had a bit of a chat this morning on the paper review show about Miley Cyrus, who appeared at Glastonbury over the weekend. I found it quite bizarre that she was gyrating, simulating sex with the microphone, simulating oral sex with the microphone. The backdrop to her performance, the stage and her costume, was full of occult symbolism. Miley Cyrus is probably okay. You know, when I say that, Cyrus and many of these young, sensationally successful musicians and singers maybe are not aware of what the symbolism means. It's a bit distasteful, I suppose, when children are watching TV to see a woman doing that sort of stuff on stage. I talked about it this morning, why it might be happening, the sexualisation of children. So I thought, why not close today's monologue with some Miley Cyrus and Mark Ronson. Nothing breaks like a heart. Why not? Here's some Miley Cyrus on the Richie Allen Show. Back with Barrie Trower in exactly 3 minutes' time. Don't go anywhere. Great to be with you. Welcome to the show. Right, Miley Cyrus on the Richie Allen Show. The time is exactly 28 minutes to the top of the hour. Let's welcome back a friend of ours. Timely to be speaking with him. Hundreds of thousands of people attended Worthy Farm in Somerset over the last few days, attending the Glastonbury Festival, where the UK mobile network provider EE allegedly switched on 5G transmitters to better enable those attending the concert to communicate with each other and the outside world. Now, our guest is no stranger to you, and he's back today to finish off a Q&A session that we began about 4 weeks ago. Hundreds of questions came in for him. I've known him for many years. He's a brilliant man, a physicist with degrees in nuclear and atomic physics and also research. He's also a former Royal Navy weapons researcher, a verifiable expert on all things microwave technology, EMF, and of course non-ionising radiation. Thanks so much to Barrie Trower for coming back to the programme today. Barrie, how are you?
I'm okay, sir. Before you start, could I just mention I've received a very beautiful letter complimenting you on your programme from a gentleman I'll just call Richard here. And he has also asked if somebody wishes to donate to your expenses in your programme, how can they do it without using a computer? Without, for some reason, people don't like to send money over computer.
Of course.
So could you, at the end of the programme, explain how people could send you money without using a computer?
Thank you, Barrie. I need to get a PO box or something like that. One of the things I can't do is give out my home address for obvious reasons. But I've got to get a snail mail address for people to do that. Thanks for mentioning that, and thanks for coming back on the programme. I wonder, and thanks for mentioning the letter, and hello to Richard if Richard is listening. Have you heard anything? I know it's only been a day, about Glastonbury, this fantastic, wonderful festival where people gather to listen to live music, to be out in the open air, not sitting at home on the computers or on the phones. The network provider EE was due to switch on transmitters over the weekend. I know that Glastonbury Council were very much against the idea because of concerns about safety, but there were some gentlemen, I think well-meaning gentlemen, who went online and posted some videos of very high readings, EMF readings, at the site of the festival. I was just wondering, Barrie, has anybody phoned you today to talk to you about Glastonbury or anything like that?
No, I've had several conversations with members of the council or representatives of members of the council leading up to today. I heard, I think a couple of days ago, that Glastonbury were not going to switch the power on, but I've had nothing definite. And until you have it official, and I can tell you why, because it is not unusual for the industry to say they're switching on and then not switch on, and everybody says, oh, there's no change there, this is quite nice, what was all the fuss about? And then they switch on sometime later when there is no opposition. So it's, you know, I haven't heard officially whether it is on or off, but I wouldn't underestimate the cunningness of the industry either.
Very good. One of the things that I thought this morning, and I'm a complete layman, I know nothing about this, thank God that I can bring you on the programme, but there was, again, a credible gentleman who had an EMF reader at the farm, and he was very concerned that it was spiking and showing high levels. Now, I'm, again, a layman or a lay person. I would have thought, Barrie, if there were 300,000 people spread over a couple of square miles, if you used an EMF reader, you would get a high reading anyway, because many of those people have mobile phones. Am I right in thinking that?
You're absolutely correct, sir. And it's actually quite a brilliant deduction as well, if I may say. When people are at music concerts, like in the Royal Albert Hall or the O2, and they take out their phones for some particular reason. In fact, the level of radiation is magnitudes above any safe level, magnitudes above. Now, with 300,000 people there, and they're all ringing their grannies or their boyfriends or girlfriends or somebody, or even each other in neighbouring tents, the microwaves, you have what is known as constructive interference, which is rather like standing waves. The microwaves can pile on top of each other, and then on top of each other, and on top of each other. And in fact, you can have a humongous dose of microwaves from all of the sets around and all of the people using them, apart from all of the houses and the natural transmitters, the sort of 1 to 4G that are going anyway. So I would, if somebody said to me, would you expect Glastonbury to be a mega high area of microwave radiation, I said, or I thought, you know, I would be very surprised if it wasn't, with all of the excitement going on there.
Very good, Barrie. Thank you. Barrie Trower is our guest. Lots of questions for Barrie, and we've got plenty of time as well. I'll get through as many as we want. I'll get to Molly's question in a moment. David Mortimer with a brilliant question. Diane has a brilliant question. Diane Dennison in Ireland. But we'll ask Andy's question first. Andy is in with how safe, Barrie, are LED light bulbs, which are all the rage? There's a question for you now.
Yeah. There are different types as well now. Unless they are fitted with 5G, as some of them are now on lampposts, a light-emitting diode, there are various types. I mean, for instance, you can have a light-emitting diode on an ordinary 3-pin plug. And I'm sure if you have one of these sockets where you put 3 or 4 3-pin plugs in, and there's a little light at the end, that can be an LED. You can also have, and I've seen people now with 5G, putting these masks over their face that give a sort of a 3-dimensional picture across your face. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I can picture it, yeah.
Now, I have read that the LED lights in those, the actual, that close to the eye, the actual limit for the eye is something like 17 minutes, 16 or 17 minutes, and that's an adult.
Wow.
So there are different types of LED lights depending which fluorescence color they're going for, because some of them can have, they can be quite complex. Some of them can have different sort of argon gases in. So it depends really what color they are and what it is they're giving out. Normally they should not be a problem. But if you're going to put lots and lots of them together and strap them across your eyes, I would seriously, I would read the instruction manual that comes with it, and specifically read the small print at the end, because I think you will find that if you have it sort of within a few inches of your eyes, the radiation then has a very serious limit of just a few minutes. And really, if you're a child or you're below the age of an adult, again, I would question the manufacturer and say, is this safe? Because you could develop some form of optical damage if you're sitting there for 90 minutes watching a football game.
Good stuff, Barry. Thank you. Dr. Barrie Trower is our guest today. Monday, it is July 1st, 2019. Molly asks, and a lot of people are asking this question, I think, with 5G imminent. And there are a lot of comments here and questions about vandalism, and I think Barry addressed that last time around. It's a very serious crime to be going at any of this stuff if you see it in your neighbourhood, and it can have serious consequences for you, so you got to think very hard about that. But Molly asks, do radiation detectors actually work, and if so, which one would Barry recommend? People are really interested, Barry. Can we buy one of these radiation detectors, and you know, where would we get one, and which one would you recommend?
Right. I never use the term doctor because I don't know.
I know you don't.
I was awarded one overseas, but I don't know if it's legal in this country, so I just rely on my UK degrees. Right, detectors. Now, you can waste an awful lot of money hiring or buying detectors. First of all, the most dangerous parts of the microwave radiation, they probably will not pick up anyway. You know, the little handheld things that look like cell phones.
Right.
They will not pick up 5G. They will not pick up the most dangerous part of the radiation, which are, forgive my bad English, which are the pulse frequencies or modulations. And the pulse frequencies have known to be dangerous since 64 BC. Now, when I was debriefing spies in the Cold War, we had about 30 or 40 pulse frequencies that could cause severe neurological and physiological damage to the brain and the body. Now, from the Cold War, where we had 30 or 40 or 50 pulse frequencies, the list now is between 600 and 750 pulse frequencies, and it is mathematically, it is 750 factorial. In other words, you can have the effects of one multiplied by the effects of another, multiplied by the effects of another, and so on. Now, your handheld meters will not pick up the modulations, which really are the dangerous part of the wave. They will certainly not pick up 5G. They will pick up probably a few of the Gs, and they will have a limited range at that. So you can use them, but they will not really give you the whole truth, and you will not be picking up the most dangerous part of the microwave transmissions. So the only thing you can do, and I suspect you wouldn't be able to do this, is what you would need is a full range electromagnetic spectrometer that goes from 0 to 300 gigahertz with a pulse frequency of 0 to 750. Now, basically you need a degree in electrical engineering or physics just to understand what all the dials are. And I would imagine they're about £7,000 to buy. You can hire people that will come and do a reading, but they will charge quite a lot of money. But if you use the handheld ones, they will at least tell you what is coming within those frequencies and what direction they're coming from. But there are a lot of frequencies they will not pick up, and they do not pick up pulse frequencies. And really, you could be wasting your money.
You could be wasting your money. Thanks for that, Barry. That answers a couple of questions that I had about some of the, I think, very well-meaning people who attended the festival over the last few days. And there are one or two dark actors in the independent media making all sorts of claims that they can't substantiate about Glastonbury and what happened there, which is a bit of a shame, but it's important to... I want to, before we get to David Mortimer's excellent question, there's loads of really important questions. Barrie Trower is our guest, and I wouldn't classify, not that, I don't claim to have any knowledge, but I can do my own research. Barry is a verifiable expert in this field, proven to be an expert, and these are conversations that Barry has, not just with me, but with other content creators, that you really need to share with people who are unaware of 5G and the health implications of it, but also microwave technology anyway. So before we get to David's question, you and I spoke years ago about your time debriefing Cold War spies, and you just reminded me there, I don't want to scare anybody, but what the technology was able to do in terms of when it was used against spies, spying on the UK, the physiological effects that you described that it had on people. And you talked a couple of minutes ago about the technology today being able to piggyback on top of transmitters, piggybacking on top of one another. The implications, Barry, a lot of it, I'm going to put one question. We've had about 20 questions like this, but I'm going to put it into one. What are the implications of 5G for the government or other interested parties in spying on what you and me and others are doing inside our homes, inside the homestead? People are very interested in that aspect of it as a device for espionage, spying on people, as a frequency, as a technology. Will it be used in that way?
Oh, I can go one better than that, sir. 5G is going to work in tandem with smart meters. And what everybody is planning is that you will have a rather like an invisible three-dimensional mesh that will go right through every single house, right through the whole area where you have 5G and smart meters. And I actually have the references from a document where the director now of the CIA, the American CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, has said, and I will quote, governments in the plural, that is Western governments can and will spy on individuals using 5G and smart meters.
Wow.
It is accepted. And in fact, the apparatus is being put in place whereby televisions now are being manufactured with cameras in.
Yes.
And if you think, take the ordinary smart meter, which will be linked in with 5G, and smart meters are Wi-Fi, which again will be linked into 5G. What you have is the smart meters will link to up to 15 different things in your house, like the refrigerator, the television, and all sorts of bits of apparatus, even the light switches. And the 5G will... Well, they will know, but with smart meters and 5G, they will know exactly where you are, what you're doing, what you're saying. There is nothing you cannot do within your house without either one of them knowing where you are and what you're doing.
Even what you're eating, Barry, because one of the things that has occurred to me, I don't believe that man-made CO2 is changing the climate on planet Earth. It's not because I'm a Luddite, I just don't believe it. And some of the solutions they are offering as a way to deal with climate change are really scary. It's like George Orwell stuff, telling people what they can eat and what they shouldn't eat. And what you're explaining to me now, Barry, is that it's going to be very easy for them to understand what you're eating, when you're eating it, what sort of energy you're using, what you're doing inside your home, and maybe at some stage in the future they might take punitive measures against people based on their ability to see everything as you've just described.
Oh, yeah, brilliant. It's already in place. What can happen is you have a smart meter in or near your house that will link up with up to 15 things in each house.
Right.
It will
TV
know
camera.
every time a light switch is turned on, every time a door is opened and closed, because what they can do, and if they wish, the camera in your television, the camera in your cell phone, they can be operated, if they wish, remotely. Also, the microphones can be operated remotely. You have already facial recognition linked in to the main mobile system, so that any face that comes up or any face that is seen is linked with Facebook and all the other ones and everything that's ever been taken. And so you have facial recognition. Again, if you've been through an airport, that is automatically on the internet. They have voice recognition. So, and I had a rather alarming telephone call just a couple of days ago from a lady who is electrosensitive to all of these microwaves, and she telephoned me on a cell phone. And I said, I know this is going to be a silly question, but why are you ringing me on a cell phone when you have a landline and it doesn't affect you as much? And she said, well, I'm on benefit. And she said, now, a condition of my benefit is that I carry a cell phone and I am contactable by the Department of Benefits. I am contactable day and night, 24 hours a day.
My God, Barry. And this woman is hypersensitive to the frequency and has been told that she must carry this bloody thing, excuse my language.
Yep. And if you think now, with 5G and with smartphones and cameras and voice control, and there is a remote switch where they can be remotely operated. There is nothing that you can do inside your house that they cannot tap into if they wish. And this, to me, has sinister implications on two fronts, because it uses the 2.4 gigahertz microwave, 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, which is easily hackable, so you can have organized crime and pedophiles anywhere within 30, 40 meters of the house hacking in. But the other thing that worries me is that children's toys come with apps in, where you can talk to the toys and they will answer you. Teddy bears and all sorts. And children take these toys to bed, and they are hackable, and they can have cameras in the eyes. And now, if you have a paedophile ring hacking into those, the people inventing these just haven't thought out the wider implications. But to put it, and I'll answer this now, please forgive me, anyone listening who thinks I'm crude, but they can listen to you in your bedroom, they can listen to you in the toilet, and they can tell exactly what you are doing in the toilet. And if any government agency, like the Department of Social Security or those that control the house rates, they can tell how many people are in the house at any one time, and they can also tell you what room they are in at any one time.
Wow, Barry. Do you know, I want to ask you a question on this. It's very good you mentioned crimes against children, because it's been my understanding over the years that perverts and paedophiles have become very sophisticated at using the internet, and like very, very, very sophisticated at using the dark web. And you've made a very good point there, that it could be open season on the privacy of young children in the home. You mentioned a minute ago that you wonder, did they consider the implications of the technology? I've known you for years, and even though I've not met you, I love you. I love listening to you. I could listen to you all night. Maybe we have to start thinking that it isn't that they didn't think of the implications. Maybe this is what was meant to happen all along, Barry. That's where I go.
Absolutely, sir. You could be absolutely correct. Yep, I can totally agree with you.
Yeah, and you keep an open mind, and that's why I love having you on. You're not somebody who deals in absolutes. You've got an absolute right to talk about the technology from a technical point of view, as you do, but you don't speculate and you don't deal in absolutes. It's deadly serious, the implications of it. Hi to Laurie, who's in the States listening to this. We'll get to your comment in a minute, Laurie. I want to just get through some more questions for Barry, because there are lots of them have come in. Here's two that are connected, from David Mortimer and from Diane Denizen. Diane says, David first of all says, will you kindly ask Barry when 5G, or if 5G will be officially classified as a Group 1 carcinogen to humans? That's one. And Diane asks, what about RF protection, Richie, as in shielding, RF shielding? What does Barry think of that? And does he think that people are understanding the danger, or is it just a case of telling people things they don't want to hear? Before we talk about RF shielding and Diane's question, David asks, will anybody clarify this stuff or classify it as a Group 1 carcinogen? I shouldn't say stuff, I should say technology, to humans. What says you, Barry?
Well, on the 25th of we're 1st of July now. The 25th of June, there was a parliamentary debate by Parliament with advice from our government scientists just a couple of weeks ago, and MPs were trying to ask this question and bring it up and come up with the dangers, and the answer via the government scientists was that there was not enough evidence to show that there was anything to worry about, and that was of the 25th of this month. And they said that there was no conclusive evidence, and their experiments did not conclude that there was any danger at all for the public whatsoever. That was of the 25th of this month. I do know that breakaway members from the World Health Organization have specified that this should be a class 1 carcinogen because there are around 150 epidemiological studies. One country around one transmitter has found 7,000 deaths from cancer. There is another country called Lima, Lima, in Peru, where the industry is unrestricted, and worldwide it is known as Cancer City. There are legal judgments abroad. I mean, there is no doubt we knew in 1949, or the government knew in 1949, that this was a severe carcinogen, and it was covered up officially. I mean, they knew in 49 it was used as a weapon through the 50s and 60s, and it was officially covered up by the World Health Organization at the Warsaw Conference in 1973, that all of this would be withheld from the general public, and I have all the documents concerning this. 1973, it was officially covered up for two reasons. One, to protect the industry so they could make profit, and the other to avoid lawsuits.
Barrie has dropped out momentarily.
Also,
you're back, Barrie.
Yes,
sorry, we lost you for 5 seconds. My apologies. You dropped out for 5 seconds, but we didn't miss much there. Yeah, you're talking about 1949. You have the documentation. I know you've published this. I've linked to it before. Yeah. They knew. So the scientists who told Parliament a week or so ago that it's safe. Again, I don't want to be asking you to speculate, but I'm going to do it anyway. They must have known the opposite was true, Barrie. They were, in fact, telling porcupines.
They do know. They do know, because we published a document in Health Physics where we actually... I mean, this was actually published in 1932, that this was really dangerous.
They know.
We published a document, our government have published documents saying that it is dangerous. It has been known. I mean, I was involved in it during the Cold War. We used it. Our government, we used it with the Americans as weapons against the Catholics in Northern Ireland and the ladies protesting against the missiles at Greenham Common. We've known all along, but it has been covered up. It is one of these things that is being covered up, firstly, to protect the industry so they can make profit, and secondly, to avoid lawsuits, because what they have now is a runaway train that has been hijacked by children, and they can't come out now and say, whoops, we're sorry, we didn't anticipate it being so successful. But
can I ask you a question, Barrie? Sorry to interrupt you. Can I ask you a question? When it was used against, for example, you mentioned two groups of people. Let's say the Catholics in Northern Ireland. Now, I'm a lapsed Catholic, so it doesn't mean anything to me. When it was used against Catholics in Northern Ireland, were the effects of the weapons documented? So, were the people whom it was used against, were they observed afterwards? What happened to them?
Absolutely.
What happened?
And they became sick, and the ladies at Greenham Common developed cancer and had miscarriages. It's been documented since the 50s, when the American embassy, which still per capita population, the American embassy in Moscow still has per capita the highest cancer and miscarriage rate in the world. when they were microwaved from over the road by the Soviets. But all of this was done and dusted. It was Operation Pandora in 1962, when microwaves were being tested, and they used all of the brain frequencies that were known and body frequencies. And Operation Pandora was used specifically to cause harm on unsuspecting people in 62, and in 1967 it was deemed a success, and the conclusion in 1967 was that all moods and emotions can be induced, from explosive violence to sexual violence to causing cancer. That was 67.
67,
and
Barrie.
In the 90s, Operation Sleeping Beauty was introduced by President Reagan to increase the knowledge of this, and that was deemed a success. And again, they used new-found brain frequencies that could be used as pulse frequencies to cause all sorts of psychiatric and neurological illnesses as a weapon.
It might have been...
and it is still being used today, the 5G. There is a new weapon. It's called Active Denial. Its nickname is the Growler. It is at the top range of one of the 5G frequencies, and it is used for, well, it can be used for crowd control or individual control, but there is a new weapon now in the 5G. All of the Gs have known weapons in those frequencies with pulse frequencies, and the pulse frequencies are they're not nice things. They can cause blindness, they can cause heart attacks, they can cause bowels to collapse. They're not nice weapons.
No.
And you don't know you're being zapped with them.
You don't know you don't know you're on the receiving end of them. You mentioned mood changes, Barrie. Dramatic mood changes like rage.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Now, can I ask you? Here's the question: how quickly could somebody be induced to becoming enraged after being microwaved? How could that be an instantaneous thing? Could it happen very quickly?
I can give you a specific experiment which is documented, and it was published in the Lancet for our GPs, and they found that when a child at school in the playground used a cell phone for 2 minutes, the brain of the child was entrained and had long-term potentiation. In other words, the brain would not work normally for 2 hours after a 2-minute exposure. Wow. It is instantaneous. Now, if the child holds the phone across what is known as the amygdala, sort of almost parallel to the ears, you can have extreme violence, bad temper, actions like that. If it's slightly tilted forward across the hypothalamus, you can have all sorts of your senses going wrong, the coordination of your body, the polarization of the cells, that can all go wrong. They are not toys, these things, and they really should never be held to the brain, especially by children.
By children.
2 minutes, just 2 minutes of a child, the brain is entrained for 2 hours. Now, some children now, with the use that they have, and if you're sitting in a classroom with 30 Wi-Fi computers, their brains will never, ever be normal. But if you target a certain frequency and a certain area of the brain, it is instantaneous. But the dangerous part here is you have these clever university students going in, and they're developing all these pulse frequencies that will do things for apps and all sorts of sound messages and video messages coming over the phones, but they have no idea that the pulse frequencies they're using are known weapons frequencies. And to give you an example, Stanford University published a paper saying the two most dangerous frequencies to go anywhere near the brain are 2.4 and 0.9 gigahertz. Those are the very two frequencies which have been chosen for Wi-Fi.
Every now and then, Barry, a man takes a gun and goes into a supermarket or into a building or a school and will murder lots of people. And I'm sure there are mentally disturbed people there, and there are politically charged people. But sometimes the family and the neighbours and the friends of such men will say they just refuse to believe it. This is a mild-mannered man. He's not political. He never said a bad word or did a bad thing to anybody. He works in the local homeless shelter. He's lovely. We cannot believe that he picked up a weapon and went into a building and began shooting people. And I've often wondered, is it just possible that maybe one or some of these mass shooting rage events are maybe down to exposure to this technology? Maybe some sinister agenda applied by maybe a sinister organisation to bring about a change in people's thinking would maybe induce somebody to do something truly awful. I don't know, and I know again we can't speculate, but I wonder about that, you know?
Oh, I'm not speculating. It's been done.
It's been done.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about levels of evil, Barry, that are unimaginable, you know?
Oh, yeah, Operation Pandora, Sleeping Beauty,
Yeah.
And those are just two of several. It's been done.
It's been done. And I better go back to Diane's question. She won't be happy if I don't get an answer from you. I've looked up RF shielding online, and I get a number of different products. Electromagnetic shielding, that blocks radio frequency, electromagnetic radiation, RF shielding. Diane basically wants to know, is it any good? What do you think as a protection? Is it worth looking into?
Now, you can spend £100,000 on shielding, and then you will find that either it doesn't work, or if it does work, it doesn't work for very long. And the problem is, first of all, it has to be done by an expert. A lot of people will put up bacon or kitchen foil around the walls and say, well, that'll stop it, which, yes, it will temporarily, but the foil will, under the radiation, turn black. Then it will become a transmitter, a receiver and transmitter itself. That's the first thing. If you're going to put up anything that will capture or stop electromagnetic radiation at any frequency, it has to be professionally earthed. Because once it is charged up, it's a bit like you getting out of a car on a hot day and you touch the door handle and get an electric shock. It has to be professionally earthed. The other thing, if you put up radiator foil or any form of insulation around the house, if any radiation gets into the house, then it cannot escape, and you are basically putting yourself inside a microwave oven. Now, what I would recommend is that you are not going to shield yourself permanently if you're in a high zone area, because to shield yourself against 5G and Tetra, which is the airwave, the police emergency system, they are immensely powerful. And to shield yourself against those, you are basically living in a metal cage. And that isn't good for you anyway. The best thing you can do is get military-style netting and have a Faraday cage where you spend most of the evening sitting down against the direction of where the radiation is coming in. Well, the Faraday cage would go all around you, but specifically against the direction where it's coming in. But what you do need, and where most of the damage is done, is to your immune system when you're sleeping, because the level of melatonin from the pineal is affected, and that rebuilds your immune system when you're sleeping. And people who sleep in electromagnetic fields, microwaves, they are known to have their immune system 40% deficient when they wake up in the morning.
So they feel lousy. They wake up in the morning, they feel lousy, Barry.
Yeah. So the best thing you can do is get military style and Army Navy stores, ex-military stores, that they all sell this. It's the first thing the military do when they land and they set up a base. They put up an electromagnetic shield. Just like you see in the tropics when you have mosquito netting around a four-poster bed, that sort of thing. You can get military netting, you have that put up, you have it professionally earthed into the ground, or you run a cable into the ground and run a copper cable into the ground. That will keep you safe whilst you are sleeping, even against 5G. And I would recommend you have one around where you sit in the evening if you watch television or knit or read. And if you move around the house, what I recommend to people, when a lady would go to a doctor and be asked to undress, she would go behind a screen. If you make a set of screens just with hardboard on caster wheels, just make a nice screen that would go around a chair or somewhere, and shield that screen just with a thin coating of tin, and all you need then is to hire a very simple microwave detector that will tell you roughly where the transmissions are coming from. You won't get a detector that tells you where the 5Gs are coming from. Just get a detector, tell you where most of the radiation is coming from, and just put the screen between you and the transmitter, and that will shield most of you. And for anyone who has the luxury of being able to take time off, if you are finding yourself becoming electrosensitive or suffering from microwave sickness, the good news is if you can get away for 6 weeks, and with a good diet, your body will recharge and you will come back fully charged. So there are things you can do, but if you're saying, can I protect myself 24 hours a day, unfortunately the answer is no.
You can't. Are you hopeful, Barry? There are some more questions. Can I finish that question? Because I was going to ask you, are you hopeful that because of the pushback in Belgium and the pushback in Switzerland and the pushback in California, are you hopeful that because of your work and others, that more people seem to be aware of this issue than any other agenda at the moment? People are really becoming aware of it. Are you somewhat hopeful that it might be stopped?
Oh, I am hopeful, and it is going to be stopped, and I can tell you why. There are, at the moment, 187 countries working to control this industry. There are, for 5G alone, there are 350 recognized organizations, environmental organizations in the world, from, it's about 80 or 90 countries now, who are doing something really positive and really active. More of the world are trying to stop this than are trying to put it out. It is only now the most corrupt countries that are giving way to this, namely us, Australia, New Zealand, most of America, but 14 states are now battling against it, and Canada. Most of the world now are fighting against this, and the industry are now rather like Custer's last stand. The Indians are circling. There are lawsuits galore being filed against the industry. A couple of days ago, a world major insurance company, I think Swiss Re, said this is a mega risk and nothing can be covered via insurance. The industry, in their defense with the governments, are shedding all of their responsibility onto signatories. In other words, owners of blocks of flats are now being made liable. School governors, school principals, university chancellors.
Barrie, can I just jump in? Sorry to interrupt. Can I just jump in? This is really important. What you're saying is that the owners of the technology and the cell phone companies, they're actually going to apartment blocks and suggesting to the owners of those apartment blocks that they put up the transmitters, but only if the owners of the buildings accept responsibility for any problems thereafter. Is that right?
Oh, no, it's done. It's been done.
That's incredible.
It's done. Any signatory now takes full legal liability for all illnesses.
Wow.
The
amazing.
cost of repairing the environment, they actually sign for it. In fact, you will find, and I haven't found anything to the alternative now, the industry have washed their hands of legal liability, as have the government and the government scientists. The only people now who can take legal liability are the signatories who say, yes, I will take this transmitter on my land for however many £1,000 a year you're going to pay me.
Now, what does that mean?
That's already happened.
That's already happened. So that means then that EE and Vodafone and O2 are not responsible, but local councils will have responsibility if they go on lampposts, which they seem to be going on or will be going on. So the local council will then have responsibility.
That's a good question, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
In this last week, I have had 3 separate barristers in my house here for confidential talks to bring action against councils. And the argument is whether councils, when they make a decision, are immune from prosecution. And one of the barristers has said, well, no, they're not. And he came up with a law to do with, I'll paraphrase this, making a stupid decision when the evidence was there. And another barrister said, well, hang on, you can actually take them to the civil court if you use their Christian name and surname and take them as an individual. So the argument is whether the councils, which is what I believe they believe, have immunity from prosecution. But this is happening.
It's really important, Barrie. It's interesting using the name. So you might take the city manager or you might take the council leader to court for placing this technology near your home and causing you any number of health problems. Barrie Trower is our guest, and Barrie has degrees in nuclear and atomic physics. He's a physicist and a former Royal Navy weapons researcher. Barrie has debriefed Cold War spies for the government. I declare him, and I have done for years, to be a verifiable expert in this field. It's great to have him back on the programme. It's not all doom and gloom. It's great to hear that. Barrie, we hear all the time about a future world where people will be more connected to technology, even implanted technology. Eventually that human beings will be connected to the internet through their minds and connected to a cloud of information. We also hear a lot about transhumanism, a future world where we are partly technology merged with our bodies. We are not human beings as we used to be. It sounds very much to me like this agenda, 5G, speaks to that and works towards that, some future world where we are part machines and part human. Or am I reading too many science fiction novels?
No. They do have apparatus now which can be planted, I think it has to be 150 meters from your house. They have apparatus now where they can actually scan your brain with microwaves, and they can tell which part of your brain is active, and by knowing which part of your brain is active, they can know what you are thinking. And the technology with the supercomputers now, they can actually deduce certain words of what you are thinking. So they can read your brain and know what moods or what hormones are moving. They can also know in some cases, what words are being thought. They can certainly know whether you are being aggressive. I mean, this is being used by the police and the military now. They can scan brains of crowds, and they can pick out the people where the amygdala is active and the hypothalamus, and they can sort of work out the level of aggression within a crowd. That can be done. I don't believe that you can replace the human brain has been sort of 4.5 billion years in the making. I don't think you're going to make one of those very quickly.
No.
But they can be understood, and I don't think you will replace people with computers.
No.
Certainly not yet.
Merge them, maybe merge them. Do you know what's really, really important now that you brought up? This transmitter that can read the brain and even read thoughts, is that in recent weeks, the BBC has reported that police forces in this country want to use artificial intelligence to predict crimes. They want to use artificial intelligence programs to look at people and to determine who in society is most likely to commit a crime. This goes to the science fiction book written by the story written by Philip K. Dick, Minority Report, which was made into a film by Steven Spielberg. That's scary stuff, Barry, because what you just described is technology.
The technology is there.
Pre-crime.
You can have a scanner and have it and look on a little screen, and you can see inside their brain, and the computer will work out the level of aggression or not, as the case may be, or whether they're about to attack you.
Do you know what's scary about that? What's scary about that is, in the near future, I could get a knock on my door and a policeman could say, we need to detain you for 6 to 8 hours because we believe you're in an agitated state and that you might do something. We're not saying you will do something, Mr. Allen, but there's a possibility, so we're going to detain you for 8 hours. That's not impossible, Barry.
In fact, what you're saying there, when I was teaching in the college, in the maximum security wing in Wormwood Scrubs Prison, which is a maximum security prison in London, in those days you had preventive detention, whereby if the police thought you were going to commit a big crime, they could just lock you up. And
I didn't know that.
It was done away with, but in fact what you're suggesting is that they're going to bring it back.
They could bring it back, and it obviously when it happened when you were based at Wormwood as a teacher, obviously when it happened then, there would have been a great outcry against it. People would have said, this is disgusting, it's disgraceful, it's wrong. But now if you said to people, well, we have the technology, we know for sure that this man might commit a crime, we know for sure that he might, we know for sure that he will do something. Barrie, we're talking, this is horrible stuff to be thinking about, isn't it? I mean, it's...
I had a man in my class come in, and he was looking rather glum, and I said, hello, John. What's the matter? And he said, I've just got 18 years. And I said, my goodness, so did you go after the crown jewels or something?
Yeah.
He said, no. He said, I stole an orange, and I've been put in under preventive detention because they say if I'm going to steal an orange, they're preventing me committing further crimes.
No way, Barrie.
And it's rather like in the United States when 3 strikes and you're out for life.
And when was this again? This was in the 70s or 80s, was it?
This was late 60s.
Late 60s. Oh my God. I mean, presumably he didn't stay in prison for 18 years. Hopefully he didn't anyway.
No, he didn't. But I mean,
but they could have done it.
Sentences were very long in those days.
Yeah,
I mean, in my class, somebody doing 30, 42 years was not unusual. I mean, I did have spies and the great train robbers, some of the great train robbers and that. But I mean, I've had classes where the least sentence was 30 years.
It's unimaginable to me that. It's unimaginable. I want to just go back to something you said earlier on before I forget, because Barrie dropped into the conversation. And some of my listeners might have thought that I was slow on the uptake because Barrie mentioned the city of Lima in Peru. But I'm not slow on the uptake because I listen to every word that Barrie says. Barrie mentioned Lima, and he mentioned that it is known as Cancer City and that it's got a huge problem with cancer rates there because of electromagnetic radiation. And you might be thinking I should have challenged Barrie. Well, I kept it, and I've been looking up, while I've been chatting with Barrie, I've been looking at various sources there. Of course, Barrie is absolutely right. Lima is known as Cancer City, and it is widely believed in Peru that it is because of the total lack of regulation when it comes to these mobile phone towers. You are absolutely right, Barrie. It is an epidemic in Peru. And
I have research papers arrive every single day, and I read them.
Imagine that. No regulation there whatsoever. And if you're within 400 metres, I think you mentioned that the towers are broadcasting, they are pulsing out frequencies maybe far higher than normally they would do maybe in this country. And anybody living within a half a kilometre of one of these towers in Lima is in serious trouble. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Absolutely, yep.
And no mention of it in UK media whatsoever. Widely spoken about in Central America and in South America, but no mention of it over here. Cancer rates absolutely off the scale there in Peru. Those poor people. And they're not stupid people. They're just as intelligent as us, but maybe they're just not informed about it. I mean...
No, I do represent these countries. Yeah. I represent quite a few poor countries around the world. And the problem is, and it's virtually the same with this country, is that the industry and the government, backed by the military, are so powerful, and without being disrespectful, the big main transmitters tend to go up in the heaviest populated, poorest areas where people do not have the means to take the most powerful industry in the world to court.
It's dreadful. Charlie O'Malley has sent a tweet. It is dreadful. It's absolutely horrendous to even think about that going on in Lima. And who knows how many other countries in the developing world, this is going on without the public's awareness. I'm sure it's very many. Charlie says on Twitter, he says, how does Barrie keep so calm and so rational? You'd be inclined with all of this going on to get very angry and very irate, but you stay remarkably calm, and it's to your credit, Barrie. It's probably why so many people are prepared to sit down and listen to you. Is it the scientific background? Is that why you stay so calm and relaxed when thinking about this information?
It's a spiritual background, sir.
Yeah. Go on.
I have a spiritual background, and I know that getting angry and calling people names will not do me any good. And in fact, when I challenge people at conferences or I speak, in fact, the more gentle you can be, the more effect you have. Because I've always found, especially in the military, that aggression meets aggression.
Right.
If somebody shouts, the next person shouts louder and louder and louder. But the quieter you go and the more gentle you become, then people start to listen, and it throws them. And it's the way I am. But I have a spiritual background, and I believe spiritually that we will win this.
It's wonderful you saying that, because I get a lot of feedback about guests who come on the programme, and feedback is generally good about the guests. Sometimes listeners are, I didn't appreciate that guest, or maybe, you didn't get enough proof or whatever. The feedback with you is always that it's great to hear somebody lucidly, rationally and calmly explain matter-of-factly what's going on. And you know what's amazing about that? Listeners tell me, I love listening to Barrie, Richie, because I can take the audio and I can bring it to a skeptic and say, have a listen to this, because Barrie is not ranting and waving his hands around. He's saying, look, these are the facts. This is what has happened in the past. We can prove it. This is what very well may happen in the future. And it's great to be able to do that, to use your voice and to share it with people who don't have a clue, because I think still, Barrie, the majority are still unaware. Is that fair to say in society?
They are unaware because the publicity is blocked. And the problem is the main communicators in this country, the big tycoons, they tend to own the newspapers and the televisions and the communications industries, and anything to do with harming people from microwaves, it just does not get transmitted or published, because they are protecting themselves and protecting their industry. And there is if you like, a censorship.
And there's no doubt, Barrie, I've been speaking to you for, I think the first time I spoke to you was when I was doing radio in Spain. There's no doubt you and others, colleagues around the world, have proven beyond a doubt that exposure to electromagnetic radiation undoubtedly causes cancer. It undoubtedly causes autoimmune diseases. It undoubtedly causes neurological problems. These are facts now. These are irrefutable.
I will say the industry themselves admit it causes cancer. The government has published it causes cancer. The judiciary, the high courts around the world have said, yes, it causes cancer, and cases have been won. Epidemiological studies we've had, there are around 200 saying it causes cancer. There never was any doubt, and there never is any doubt. It is just the problem is that the truth is being withheld from the general public. That is the problem.
Yeah, I've often said to guests, I don't say it very often, I shouldn't say often, but I do say to guests occasionally that it's a shame on the one hand that you're speaking on my show, The Richie Allen Show. Yeah, we have a healthy audience in the UK and elsewhere, but it's a drop in the ocean compared to the numbers of people listening to BBC Radio 5 or listening to LBC. I mean, that's where you belong, Barrie. It's really wrong. It's heartbreaking to me that you're not on the BBC tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't get on the programmes. They won't have me.
They just won't have you. Imagine that. A nuclear physicist, a man with degrees, a man who's worked for the government, and they just say, no, we're not having that. It's dreadful, but it doesn't seem to matter. People seem to be, becoming more and more aware of it. As you said, by the way, Barry, let's not forget that around the world, people are standing up to it. They are going to their local councils, their local authorities. They are going to their governments, and they are saying, no, you're not going to do this. We're not going to have it. And that's what I think you said earlier. It leads you to believe that this agenda will not succeed.
It cannot succeed because at the moment, at this point in time, I happen to know we have 187 countries doing something to fight this industry. The industry are hanging on to make as much money as they can, but in the end, they will have to reduce this, and virtually everything will be fitted with fibre optic cable. I mean, smart meters can be fitted with fibre optic cable. There's no problem with that. It's just cheaper to have them use Wi-Fi. But eventually, they're hanging on until they are forced to use fibre optic cable, and all of the lawsuits start coming out.
And the lawsuits will come out. You're convinced of it, and you did mention that. Of course, that it's a private thing for you, but you did mention that legal professionals, barristers, are in contact with you because I suppose they expect that they will have many clients, Barry, very quickly.
There are class actions. There is a big class action started in London. There are several all over the UK. So it is happening. It certainly is happening.
I look forward to giving plenty of publicity to those. We're coming up for 18 minutes to the top of the hour. We've got through, I think, most of the questions that have come in. It's been two brilliant programmes that you've been on. I have had listeners asking me to ask you about public speaking engagements, Barry. Is there anywhere that you might be speaking that people can maybe go and maybe bring a friend to hear you speak publicly? Is that happening?
At the moment, the problem is if I go to a public engagement, it's a day going up. I speak for a day and take questions, and then it is usually a day coming back. Whereas if I stay in my house and people, I've had three film crews in the last week here that then go back to their countries or cities, and then they show the film in big halls. I can actually achieve more staying here. My next public engagement is the first week in October when a gentleman, I believe he has hired a castle in Germany, and it's I think the 5th, 6th, 7th of October. He's hired a castle in Germany, and I'm speaking, and Professor Karl Hecht from Germany, who I think is the number one from Germany, is speaking. George Carlo from the United States, again a number one, and I think Yuri Gregoriev, the chair of the Russian Federation of Nuclear and Atomic Sciences. He's getting sort of quite an array of people from around the world, and we're going to do a 3-day conference with any questions being fired at all of us.
Brilliant, Barry. That's fantastic. It was Linda's birthday last week. I hope you had a good time last week. I remember speaking briefly with Linda last week, so I hope she's well. We'll leave it for there. It's been the quickest 70 minutes that we've ever done on this program. Let's leave it for there today. Great optimism in the brief today, in your delivery today. I really appreciate it, and I mean it when I say it, Barry. I'm delighted to know you. I'm delighted that you're out there, calmly and rationally explaining to people what they most need to hear, because this is as important as any issue, or more important at the moment than any issue that we're facing. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on, and you know that you're welcome back anytime. Don't leave it too long before you come back, and thanks for engaging with our listeners today.
Yeah, it is my pleasure. And could you sort of remind the two gentlemen that have now contacted me on how they could send you some money?
I will. I'll get a PO box set up. I can't give out my address for obvious reasons, because when you do programs like this, there are people who don't like people like me very much, and you know that. But I will, Barrie. I'll make you a promise. I will do that. And thanks for thinking of me and saying that as well. All the best to Linda. Go ahead.
And have me on again when you're ready, sir.
Real soon. You're a gent,
Thank you
Barrie.
very
Thanks
much,
for your help today. Bye for now. The wonderful Barrie Trower, live on the line from his home. Thanks to Barrie again for coming on the programme. Thanks to you for your contributions and your questions. Barrie has degrees in nuclear and atomic physics. Former Royal Navy weapons researcher. He's a teacher and a man who debriefed spies on behalf of the UK government. I call him a whistleblower, even though he doesn't agree with that, on the programme today. Great to hear the optimism there. His belief that it's not going to succeed, this, because around the world people are gathering. They are. I know this. This is not wishful thinking. They are. I can see it around the world, and telling their local authorities, no, you're not going to roll this stuff out, because if you do, we're going to come after you. We're going to come after you. We're going to sue you. We're going to come after you in ways that you never thought we would. And I think that's really important. We're coming up to 13 and a half minutes to the top of the hour. Right, look, I did a 1 hour live stream this morning. It's been a full-on programme today. I'm not going to stay with you till the top of the hour. I'm going to go. It's swelteringly warm in the studio, even though it wasn't that hot today. So I'm going to love you and leave you. And thank Barrie Trower again for his help. Thank you for all your questions. I'll be speaking with Vicky Haig on the programme tomorrow from France, and you do not want to miss that. Okay, if you follow the Vicky Haig story, very public story of a child abduction by the state, forced adoption, you do not want to miss an update from Vicky Haig on this programme tomorrow. I'll be back with you live at 5 o'clock as usual. But before that, you and I will do it again on YouTube tomorrow morning, where we will look at the UK's daily newspapers tomorrow. That's tomorrow, right? Right. Going to leave you with The Cult and She Sells Sanctuary. That was Monday's programme. I was Richie Allen. Look after yourselves and one another. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Thanks to Barrie again. Bye from me. Bye now.